It's been a while, only just a few months after all, and in those few months, a lot has changed, which is no surprise when talking about the most pseudo-buff character in the game. In the last video, we talked about each patch slightly improving the performance of Jing to bring him where he currently established in today's meta.
All I can say for certain is that if Hoiverse learned anything from Jing, it's better from a financial standpoint to string along the players with buffers and supports than just giving that character their best support on debut. Don't hate me for saying this.
With all of the constant pushback he receives as a 1.0 character, much like Seele, he has yet to fall. So where does the perception of Jing basically sit around this point in time? In all honesty, the judgment is very similar to Seele, in the sense of being a higher investment character that gets a lot of flack from those that have had bad previous experiences with the character. I would also like to mention that unlike Seele, Jing feels very much more situational due to the way his kit works. For the most part, at the time of you watching this video, he has felt fine to use in pure fiction alongside another AoE damage dealer, and in the Memory of Chaos as well, assuming the enemy you fight has lightning weakness and or a lot of additional enemies on the field that benefit you during the fight once you do kill those mobs. His AoE allows him to make quick work in those scenarios. Lastly, Topaz has made a resurgence as a supporter alongside your main damage dealer, so I have actually found it to be detrimental using Sparkle in the same team, especially with the amount of crit damage sources he has today. Again, there's a lot to go over, so let's just begin. Acheron released in 2.1, and around this time, Jing was already given a lot of bad rep from the community overall. I mean, for one, compared to Acheron, he was a higher investment character, and he also was a lot less of a plug-in and play damage dealer. So while the low-hanging fruit is to mention power creep, it wasn't just Jing affected by this character, but also every other damage dealer, as Acheron was just a lot easier to use. And again, lower investment, which matters in the context of having a ton of new players at the time of her arrival. So to a new player, it was always recommended to go with Acheron over Jing, as you wouldn't have an abundance of resources to make Jing work optimally, and dependent on the enemies having lightning weakness, while Acheron ignored the enemies of weakness altogether. Doesn't seem like a hard choice now, does it? What's important to note is that even at this point, Acheron hadn't even obtained her best in slot or signature support, while Jing had all of the puzzle pieces put together at that point. So even for veterans, this seems like a good time to let the character retire once and for all. This time period would then represent the lowest usage of Jing ever, with no hope of that number ever really going back up. I don't want to make the rest of the video sound gloom and doom, so let's move on. If you're a longtime enjoyer of this character, you pretty much knew what you signed up for. You also knew it was much easier to bring a character like Jing up to par with other damage dealers, and that's thanks to the many angles his kit pursues. I mean, the character has a follow-up attack, AoE damage, and evenly dispersed damage when played in hypercarry teams. However, much like Clara in her recent respective video, Jing absolutely had a hard-hitting follow-up attack that was guaranteed every single cycle, and this will tell us everything we needed to know about the future of this character. So when we look at Jing and Clara comparative to other damage dealers, they're able to function alongside Topaz, whom also had nice damage to add to the overall team damage. This matters a lot more when there is any source of buffs towards a follow-up attacker. For instance, a new planar set, a new character, you're buffing the damage of two characters, not one. And this took my small hypercarry brain some time to realize. It oddly feels like we're still in the part of the intro of the video, but there's just a lot of context I felt was necessary to provide. 2.2 would roll around, and this patch would bring a brand new Harmony character that brought every follow-up attacker to new heights. Jing benefited immensely from the kit of Robin thanks to the Lightning Lord he had in his kit. I mean, Robin, much like Ruah and Mei and Sparkle, was able to provide buffs that lasted longer than one turn, which in turn buffed every damage source that Jing had. Robin, unlike Sparkle, gave stronger buffs to the whole team, up to 50% damage amplification, 20% critical damage, and massive attack boosts that scale based on Robin's own attack. Considering Robin also gave a full turn with her ultimate, this would not only give guaranteed Lightning Lord stacks, but also generate more energy when taking said turn. However, Robin, unlike other buffers, has trouble with light cone usage due to how her kit works, so unless you're taking a premium 5-star light cone, you are missing out on nice chunks of overall boost for the damage dealer. Robin, however, was just better than Jing Yuan in every way for Jing, especially when you take Topaz into consideration, whom also massively benefited from the addition of Robin. Now, to be completely honest, depending on the amount of investment your Ruame has, it's very easy to not see much of a difference with Robin in the team. But when we compare the performance at an easier level, it's very clear who the winner would be. It was just important to have Jing equipped with different boots depending on the Harmony character used, however, because one provided attack while the other gave speed. This was also the time in which Topaz was to have a rerun, which gave current owners of the character the option to further invest in a hybrid damage dealer that not only helped with faster clears depending on the amount of investment into her, but also buffing Jing's personal damage with her light cone and the first Eidolon crit damage buffs. However, with the release of Robin, it really brought to question if you needed to further invest as you might think you do, because the crit damage was now being provided by Robin in her base kit. If we're being completely honest here, Jing even getting better post Acheron was a pipe dream, and it's no surprise this wasn't to increase the usage of the character. It was even arguable whether or not Robin was a character worth your investment as a follow-up attack enjoyer. But every Jing main knew at the end of the day, 2 Ruame is better than 1. I won't lie that even this synergy went under the radar for me. I mean, it's no surprise considering I'm a dirty little Seeley enjoyer, who isn't even a follow-up attacker to begin with. So while this new Jing team never became a part of the top meta, it really didn't matter because in all honesty, as a veteran, it's agreed upon that having an older damage dealer be brought closer to par with top tier characters is better than not having that done at all. This team would then go on to be a mainstay even in present Honkai Starro, and kudos to those of you that do go further with investment into Robin, because she'll allow you to comfortably bring Jing into any matchup regardless of what the enemies are weak to. So not only did Jing receive a brand new best in slot supporter for his follow-up team, but a brand new planar set was to release that gave Jing an even higher damage ceiling, Duran Dynasty of Running Wolves. If I'm being honest, it seems to be unintentional, because this planar set was best in slot for Jade, but the more I pondered on it, I realized it was just very universal for any character that has a follow-up attack in their kit. The only condition being an ally in the same team that has follow-up attacks and multiple preferred, as they're the sole one stacking the passive. Thank the heavens Topaz existed, because for Jing, an up to 25% follow-up attack boost and 25% critical damage increase would result in a massive damage increase for the character. The only issue is that considering Jing only had one follow-up attack per cycle, unless you were using a Venturine in the team party, it was difficult to stack this planar set while equipped on Topaz, but while doing so, this was to nicely increase her damage as well. In the context of what we discussed earlier, any buff to follow-up attackers was an even bigger buff to the overall team performance. I mean heck, even a Venturine could equip this planar set himself for more additional damage. That may even help with a cycle or two. Now this was an overall buff to his performance in Memories of Chaos. With the release of Jade and her planar set, Jing was to see a nice boost in the other content that also favored him, Pure Fiction. Jade, much like Topaz, had a ton of personal damage while also being skill point positive, which allowed her to be played in a team alongside Jing. Jade was essentially the AoE version of Topaz without providing the follow-up attack damage boost, but that was fine considering we had the old relic set and a new planar set that gave the follow-up attack boost already. However, for this shortcoming, Jade additionally gave a speed increase of up to 30 for the person she used her elemental skill on, and depending on the amount of enemies that damage dealer hit with their abilities, will result in passive stacks for Jade, which then massively increase her own personal damage. I mean, damage is king in Pure Fiction, because you are directly rewarded for the amount of enemies you kill versus how fast you killed, which was Memories of Chaos. So having two erudition damage dealers alongside each other that both had good synergy following the release of Robin would put Jing in a very comfortable spot in the Pure Fiction meta. I also know what you might be thinking. Considering Jade was erudition, did Jade's light cone give Jing a nice boost in personal damage as well? To answer that question, long gone are the days of Jing being shackled to Jing Yuan, and this light cone requires you to basic attack with the character of the team that already gives many skill points. In single target, this light cone is actually extremely strong, especially alongside Topaz, who has more value using her elemental skill against enemies in single target. If you don't use your skill on Jing, then you miss out on Lightning Lord stacks, which is even less damage. So honestly, this is a double-edged sword unless you use Robin with over 160 speed to give Jing another turn with her ultimate so he can basic attack. This genuinely works, but it has too much of a niche setup when taking into account the full passive. If you're like me and play the game mostly auto, it's just better to stick to the Signature or latest Erudition Herda Shop Light Cone, saves you the headache, really. To give one last update on the perception of Jing around this time period is pretty much going to be the same consensus that Seeley found herself in. Unless you're a diehard fan of the character and don't mind the higher investment, it's not worth using the boomer damage dealers when the zoomer ones are better in every way, which again this is just from a new and returning player perspective. The biggest damage done to Jing was the release of Acheron, and that considering beforehand the consensus on Jing was already poor, I don't expect the usage to increase ever again. Thank you for watching and have a nice rest of your day.